one of the inane things that's taught in modern university education is that a vast diversification is absolutely mandatory in investing in common stocks.
Professor Damodara mentioned that he is not comfortable with positions becoming a large part of his portfolio. For example, when they reach 25 to 35%. He mentioned that Apple is now 35% of Berkshire's portfolio and thinks that that is near a danger zone. Wonders if Warren and Charlie can comment.
I'd like to make one comment first, but Charlie will come up with.
I think he's out of his mind.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. But Apple is not 35% of Berkshire's portfolio. Berkshire's portfolio includes the railroad, the energy business, Garanimals, you name it, See's Candy. They're all businesses. And, the good thing about Apple is that we can go up. They buy in their stock, and instead of owning 5.6%, they got about 15 billion, 700 and some million shares outstanding. They get down to 15.25 billion without us doing anything. We got 6%. So we can't own more than 100% of the BNSF. We can't own more than 100% of Garanimals or See's Candy. And it'd be nice. We'd love to own 200%, but that just isn't doable. But they're all the same. They're good businesses. And to think that our criteria for Apple is different than the other businesses we own. It just happens to be a better business than any we own. And we put a fair amount of money in it, but we haven't got more money in it than we've got in the railroad. And Apple is a better business. Our railroad is a very good business, but it's not remotely as good as Apple's business. Apple, has a position with consumers where they're paying, maybe they pay $1,500 or whatever it may be for a phone, and these same people pay $35,000 for having a second car. And if they had to give up a second car or give up their iPhone, they'd give up their second car. I mean, it's an extraordinary product. We don't have anything like that we own 100% of, but we're very, very, very happy to have 5.6 or whatever it may be percent, and we're delighted every 0.1% that goes up. That's like adding $100 million to our earnings. I mean, our share of the earnings, and they use the earnings to buy out our partners, which we're glad to see them sell out too. The index funds have to sell if they bring the number of shares down. And, we went up slightly last year, and I made a mistake a couple of years ago when I sold some shares when I had certain reasons why gains were useful to take that year from a tax standpoint. But having heard me say that, it was a dumb decision. Charlie, you've already given your comment about it, but we do not have 35% of Berkshire's portfolio. Berkshire's portfolio is the funds we have to work with. And we want to own good businesses, and we also want to have plenty of liquidity. And beyond that, the sky's the limit, or our mistakes, who knows what the bottom is. Charlie, do you want to add anything to your earlier comment?
Well, I think that is an insane idea. It's not that easy to have a vast plethora of good opportunities that are easily identified. And if you've only got 3, I'd rather be in my best ideas instead of my worst. And now, some people can't tell their best ideas from their worst, and in the act of deciding that an investment already is good, they get to thinking it's better than it is. I think we make fewer mistakes like that than other people, and that is a blessing to us. We're not so smart, but we kind of know where the edge of our smartness is. That is a very important part of practical intelligence. And a lot of people who are geniuses on IQ tests think they're a lot smarter than they are, and what they are is dangerous. But if you know the edge of your own ability pretty well, you should ignore most of the notions of our experts about what I call diversification of portfolios.
The U.S. national debt is currently at an estimated $31 trillion, making up about 125% of the U.S. GDP. In the meantime, over the past few years, the Federal Reserve has telegraphed that they intend to monetize the debt by printing trillions of dollars, even as they insist that they're fighting inflation. Already, other major economies in the world, such as China, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil, are moving away from the dollar in anticipation of this. My question is, are we likely to face a time in the future when the US dollar is no longer the global reserve currency? How is Berkshire prepared for this possibility? And what can we do as American citizens to attempt to shelter ourselves from what's beginning to look like the beginnings of de-dollarization?
Well, I should ask you to come up here and answer some questions. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, we are the reserve currency, and I see no option for any other currency to be the reserve currency. And I think that nobody understands the situation better than Jay Powell. But he's not in control of fiscal policy, and every now and then he drops a few hints. And there was no question that when the pandemic broke out, I mean, it was a semi-war-like situation, but nobody knows how far you can go with the paper currency before it gets out of control. And particularly if you're the world's reserve currency. Nobody knows the answer to that. And you don't want to try and pick out the point at where it does become a problem, because then it's all over. I think we should be very careful. I mean, we all learned Keynesianism, and we applied it in World War II to the advantage of the country. And we did everything we could to prevent inflation during the war. And then the war ended in August of '45, and I think in January '46, and I'm not giving you exact figures at all now, but in January '46, I think the rate of inflation was at something like 1% or thereabouts. And by the end of the year, I think it was at like 15%. And again, I'm doing this from long memories, but it's easy for America to do a lot. But if we do too much, it's very hard to see how you recover once you let the genie out of the bottle and people lose faith in the currency. And they behave in an entirely different manner than they do when they feel that if they put some money in the bank or have a pension plan or whatever it may be, that they're going to get out something with roughly equal purchasing power. And it just changes the economy, and all kinds of things can happen then. And I can't predict them, and nobody else can predict them, but I do know they aren't good. And we will see. And I do this as, I voted for both parties, and it's not limited to politicians of either party or anything of the sort. People take positions. Some of them understand what they're doing. Some of them don't understand what they're doing. If they put me on some medical board, I don't understand what I'm doing. It's not that there's nothing wrong with the fact that you can't master everything. You can't all be Isaac Newton, but you can't go around pretending you do or making decisions on it. And we are not as well off in relation to curbing inflation expectations, which become self-fulfilling, and we are not as well off as we were earlier. And Berkshire is better prepared than most investments for that kind of a period. But I said this in the annual report, but we aren't perfectly prepared because there's no way to perfectly prepare. You don't know what course of action will occur. And it's a very political decision now. It's a tribal decision to some degree. And you hope for leadership that actually will do something, recognizes the problem. And America's an incredible society, rich. We got everything going for us, but that doesn't mean we can just print money indefinitely as debt. And it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Charlie?
Well, at some point, printing money to buy votes will be counterproductive.
Yep.
And we don't know exactly where that comes. And if something is going to be dangerous and unproductive, you ought to keep it a fair distance away. Now, if you have a culture that is exceptionally strong, like Japan, they have done some strange things there.
But they couldn't have been the reserve currency.
No, of course not. But Japan bought back most of the national debt and a lot of the common stocks, and debt. Just the Federal Reserve owns practically everything in Japan, and the country's working. It's had 30 years of economic stasis, but it's not going to hell. I really admire Japan, but I don't think we should try and imitate it. I don't think we're as good as Japan at taking.
They have a cohesive culture, and we don't, Charlie.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
In Japan, everybody's supposed to suck it up and cope, and in America, we complain.
So I hope you come next year with a tougher question. And thank you. And I predict I would love to be being born again today in the United States. I mean, we can do a lot of dumb things and get away with it. We can't do an unlimited number. There are people who care about that, and you have to be willing to be extraordinarily unpopular. I mean, Paul Volcker. There are other Federal Reserve chair people that would not have done what he did. It's just it's too uncomfortable. And there used to be a politician in Nebraska, and if you asked him some really tough question like, how do you stand on abortion, or he would look you right in the eye and he'd say, I'm all right on that one. And then he moved next door. Well, that's what people have done, basically, on inflation. And they one way or another, they say, I'm all right on that. And then they don't really think about what the consequences of their actions could be, particularly. And it's so much fun if there's 435 of you, to just be one of 435 instead of being the person actually responsible. Anyway, I am still... Next to the question of two superpowers, and when you get into really destroying a planet, destroying the reserve currency of the world when there's really no substitute, and forget about all the toys, I mean, it's a joke to think of any tokens or that sort of that's madness. But it's also madness to just keep printing money. Yeah. And we know how to do it. And we actually came from a money printing economy in World War II, which was required. And we suffered significant inflation. The price level, I mean, there's a million ways to judge it, but it's maybe 10 times what it was then or something like that. Well, that's getting close to the edge of where you don't want to hold dollars anymore. You want to hold something else. You want to hold real estate. You want to hold an interest in a business. There's a lot of good. Your best defense is your own earning power. If you're the best doctor in town, if you're the best lawyer in town, if you're the best teacher in town, or even if you're the 10th best or 10th, you're going to make a good living. I mean, the economy is productive, and you will succeed with your talents. But you won't succeed by hoarding dollars. You'll just succeed by the fact that your value to the community, which is a rich community overall, is sustained. And so the best investment is always in yourself. That's the answer I would give you.
Well, we have a situation where we've learned to print money in gobs and let a big chunk of our young people go right into wealth management. This is
Like we did.
yeah, like we did. Yes, we've had bad examples. And I want to say that I didn't realize wealth management was going to get so big when I went into it. And I want to apologize for what's happened.
Yeah, well, anyway, you did well.